Thanks for being on the CJN Daily.
Thanks for having me, Ellin. My pleasure.
Great to have you. So walk us through how Honest Reporting Canada discovered this controversial exhibit.
Sure. So this was at the Canadian War Museum. We have 50,000 subscribers from coast to coast. And one of our subscribers happened to be on his vacation going through the War Museum and walked through it. This is just when it had reopened, with the COVID, and saw this exhibit that sympathetically portrayed Palestinian terrorists in Israeli jails in a horrible light that totally whitewashed who they were and the crimes that got them incarcerated. Didn't tell Canadians that these are people whose day job was to murder innocent Israelis.
Now, was this an exhibit that was commissioned, or do you know sort of how it ended up passing approval to get to being exhibited in country's National War Museum?
Yeah, so I don't know the due diligence that was involved between the Canadian War Museum and the sponsoring organization, which was from the Kingdom of the Netherlands. What I do know is that it was a joint campaign effort, an exhibit between the World Press Photo and the Canadian War Museum that curated I think over a dozen photos. One, for example, shows an individual holding an AR-33 assault rifle. And, it really, you can interpret that as lionizing Palestinian terror. Another photo shows different Palestinians and doesn't mention, well, this person used to belong to the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades. Another one shows another photo of Palestinian terrorists, doesn't mention that this was somebody who was a terrorist for the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and a couple decades ago had murdered an Israeli minister. So these are not, wonderful people that we would want to laud and celebrate. These are people who have done some horrible, horrendous things. And instead of spotlighting, for example, Israeli victims of terrorism, it's giving this sympathetic portrayal of Palestinian terrorists under the auspices that there are 4,200 security detainees, quote unquote, prisoners of conscience, political prisoners, as it's framed in the exhibit, whose rights are being allegedly denied because they're not getting conjugal visits, they're not able to have in vitro fertilization, so they have to smuggle semen to give it to their spouses. And it doesn't tell you that these are people who've shot Israelis, who've stabbed Israelis. And this is the Canadian War Museum, right? This is a Crown corporation, runs under the Department of Canadian Heritage, and it hosts about 500,000 people, it claims to, every year. And this is what Canadians were told about what is a very controversial issue, the Arab-Israeli conflict. And they got this very jaundiced, very one-sided partisan portrayal. And this is a war museum, right? You're supposed to have objectivity, political neutrality. The Canadian War Museum, as a Crown corporation, is tasked to be politically neutral and objective. And this exhibit goes completely against that. It's one-sided. It sympathetically portrays one side over the other. And it really confounds and misleads more than it educates. And there's an adage that in war, the first casualty is the truth. You can't that it doesn't ring truer than with this exhibit. Canadians were misled. As we understand it, the due diligence process wasn't done thoroughly. This wasn't vetted properly. We don't understand how this came to be.
And would you be able to comment on some of the terrorist organizations and whether Canada bans some of these countries, some of these organizations from entering the country that are on the list of so-called freedom fighters, right?
Canada bans them all. The PFLP is banned. The Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades, which is an arm actually of PA President Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah Party, is a banned terrorist organization. And that's just two of the organizations of these people who are listed, and this is the kind of platform that it's receiving. So there isn't a doubt about whether these are politicians or activists. These are hardcore terrorists who have blood on their hands, and I can't imagine any other forum that would warmly receive a kind of a portrayal of these kind of people. It's even more surprising because these are our tax dollars at play, because it's a Crown corporation.
Understood. So if you don't hear back, I mean, the point is that the exhibit was a quick pop-up as soon as the museum opened, and it's pretty much down last week now. But why do you want the public to know about this? Who knows how many actually people ended up seeing it? It couldn't have been all that many because people are still, it's restricted entrance from COVID and all that, right? So, but still, why talk about it now?
Absolutely. So there was a hybrid. So there was an online and an in-person exhibit. So it's hard to say what the reach was, and it wasn't just people who were in Ottawa who saw it. It could be across the country or across the world. So its reach, there are repercussions to the viral effect of having that information online. But more than anything, because as you mentioned, the exhibit was only for a couple of weeks. It concluded on August the 15th. We want to prevent this from ever happening again. That's really what why we're trying to address this. Because if it was an innocent error or if there was malice, I don't know. We don't want to, a couple months down the road for something similar. And I think that's why the museum and the officials involved, the acting CEO and president, have to be answerable. And that's, I think, why it's so important that the public is involved. And we put out our alert, and we had hundreds of people who were mobilized from across the country who voiced their concerns. Regular lay people who either saw the exhibit in person or online. And I'm hoping that the museum will do some kind of a proper, transparent investigation and disclose that to the public about how this came to be.
Understood. Thanks so much for being here on the CJN Daily.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, Ellin.